Hi, I'm Mike, and this is the Detritus Challenge, where I take 3 items like leaves, seaweed, and logs to pit them against each other to determine what is the best soil amendment for your garden. To find out who wins this challenge, it's a challenge, stay tuned for the winner.
Hello, and welcome to the Wham Provides, where the food from plants and animals keeps us satisfied. We can grow it, find it, or catch it for dinner. Come and learn how to get it from a pro to beginner.
Have you ever met one of those guys or gals who just seems to have a knack for overcomplicating things? The type of person to take a 30-minute task and somehow turn it into a 2-hour one? Well, you're looking at one. Take this for instance. Was all of this setup for a thumbnail image really worth it? No. But gathering all these free soil amendments sure was. Gardening has the ability to be either really cheap or really expensive. On one side of the spectrum, you can get away with some dirt and some seeds, and on the other side of the spectrum, you could be spending a ton of money on raised beds, irrigation, expensive compost, and greenhouse setups. I exist somewhere in the middle of that spectrum. If I'm presented with the option of either making something or finding something myself, or buying it, chances are I'm making it or finding it myself. Sometimes it is a cost thing, but most of the times it's just a desire to figure out the process of how something works. And as a gardener, one of the fundamental things I think we should understand the process of how it works is the nutrient cycle. In its most basic form, the nutrient cycle is the biogeochemical process of how organic and inorganic materials move through an environment. In other words, it's how something goes from a plant into soil and back into a plant. The role of a good gardener is to ensure that we're putting back into the soil as much as we're taking out, which is why I have this compost system you see behind me. Knowing what to put back into our soils can be an arduous task full of a lot of research and experimentation. But lucky for you, I've spent the last few years trying to figure it out, and I've come to the interwebs to share my findings. So without further ado, here are 3 free soil amendments that I've begun adding to my garden that have led to some pretty noticeable improvements. Foraged item number 1, fallen leaves. Fallen leaves are like nature's confetti, but instead of ending up in a landfill, they end up in the belly of a happy little worm. They better not end up in the belly of a slug though, because I will straight up rip those leaves out of their mouths. Come October, I like to head down to the forest behind my house with a rake and a big old contractor's bag. I'll do this a few times throughout the fall so that I have a stockpile of leaves for winter prepping my garden beds. If you spread them around your plants, they act kind of like a cozy little nature blanket, keeping the soil warm and suppressing pesky weeds. Alternatively, you could conjure up some leafy goodness with leaf mold. This is leaf mold. Leaf mold is like a hunk of degrading leaves that exists somewhere between a mulch and a mold. It's the product of taking a bunch of wet autumn leaves and letting them sit in a contractor's bag in the absence of light for like 12 months. It slowly starts to break down and creates this humus.
Humus, noun. A dark organic material that forms in soil when plant and animal matter decays.
Humus can be made by composting, like what's currently going on in the compost bins behind me here, but it's also something that's actively and always going on in nature. One of the reasons that trees can grow so big and tall is because they're feeding on the humus from their own leaves. I collected these leaves this same time last year so that I could have them sit for the 12 months and be ready for planting this season. So this season, these are going on top of my garlic bed, which is right behind me. Another thing that works pretty well for this is seaweed. Seaweed, like this kelp that I'm gathering on the shore here, is a new garden amendment that I've been experimenting with this year. I'll have to make a follow-up video regarding the long-term effects of it, but in the meantime, what I can say is that it seems to have a similar application and effect as the maple leaves. One noticeable difference between the two, though, is their trace mineral makeups. Leaves contain minerals like calcium and magnesium, while seaweed seems to be higher in zinc, iron, and iodine. Calcium and magnesium are needed to produce something called chlorophyll, which forms the cell wall of plants. So I apply leaf mulch to anything that's going to be putting out a lot of vegetative growth. So tomatoes, corn, peppers, brassicas, legumes, basically all these things are pretty heavy feeders and will rely on these minerals. Seaweed, on the other hand, makes a wicked amendment for plants like blueberries, camellias, and other flowers. Plants like these that prefer acidic soils are a little bit more prone to iron deficiency when their soil leans too alkaline. So I applied a light seaweed mulch around some of my blueberries and flowers, and I'll check in with you next summer to share the results. I hope the slugs hate this. I just hope they smell all of it. Okay, so obviously seaweed is going to be something pretty exclusive to coastal gardeners, but there are several alternatives that provide a lot of the same benefits. Common plants like comfrey, yarrow, dandelion, and nettle all have similar mineral makeups and will provide a comparable result. That being said, marine plants are known to concentrate their mineral makeup and their nutrients more in the actual vegetative growth as compared to terrestrial plants, which concentrate most of the nutrients in the roots. Either way, both of these marine and terrestrial plants will break down into something super valuable. Forests are like the blueprint for self-sustaining systems, which is why I think we have a tremendous amount to learn from them when it comes to creating self-sustaining gardens. Another thing that forests have going for them is their relationship with fungi. Fungi form partnerships with trees through a network called mycorrhizae. Mycorrhizae is like the forest's version of the internet, except without all the cat videos. These fungal networks connect plant roots, allowing them to exchange nutrients, water, and even information. Trees and fungi communicate using chemical signals. When a tree is under stress from factors like drought, pests, or disease, it releases certain chemicals into the soil. Mycorrhizal fungi detect these signals and can help by mobilizing nutrients or activating defense mechanisms in the tree. It's like a tree sending out an SOS on Call of Duty and the fungi responding with backup support. So if we as gardeners can increase the fungi populations within our garden systems, then we're essentially creating a second line of defense for our plants. And lucky for us, fungi is something that we can easily forage. So let's hop in the truck, go for a little adventure, and see if we can find some. All right, so here with me, I have a firewood permit. This permit authorizes the removal of roadside logging debris that is either piled at roadside or dispersed within 20 meters of the road right-of-way. Firewood must be cut to a length not greater than 46 centimeters, 18 inches. That sucks. I'm gonna go and try to find anything that's like 1.5 feet or under. Fun, 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 fun. Got to the end of the road, and turns out there's a pretty good little stash over here. That's 18 inches. Nice. You're coming with me. Nice. There we go. This stuff's already got mushrooms growing on it, so there's like mycelium started. This has got some small turkey tails. So next year, I might end up with some turkey tails. I scoped a way better pile. There we go. Got a gold mine here. These are turkey tail mushrooms. That's exciting. All right, that looks like a pretty respectable size haul. Super, super grateful. Adding logs to garden beds isn't exactly a new concept. It comes from a widely used technique in gardening called Hugelkultur. I decided to try it last year. In fact, I decided to try it on February 25th, exactly 1 year ago today. So I'm kind of curious what status those logs are in. How far have they broken down, and how good does the soil look surrounding them? I have a feeling they're not going to be super decomposed at this state. It's only been 1 year. I think that it's going to be just like the outside that's going to be decomposed. It's going to be moist. The inside is going to be basically unaffected. This was the first piece of wood that I was able to take out. There's not a ton of decomposition that's happened like deep down within it, but on the outside of it, there's a remarkable amount of biodiversity on it. I'm seeing like centipedes and millipedes and all these things that are like worms with legs on them. Tons of little holes indicating that things have been eating and feeding off of this. There's roots that are attached to it. It just seems like there's a lot of biodiversity in and around the log. There's a lot to cover when it comes to hugelkultur, so let's save that for another video. But in the meantime, a couple of the big takeaways are that logs have an ability to store moisture and nutrients below the surface of the soil, which kind of acts like a food and water battery for your garden beds. So that means that I can go to the forest or to the beach like I already do, but also be harvesting some super valuable nutrients for my garden, making my leisure time both fun and productive. In the garden, there's always so much room for improvement. So much room. No cap. I'm gonna need to stop with these mushroom puns. I can't help myself when they're just so good for morale. Anyway, go forage yourself.